In fact, my Muslim friends respect Jesus far more than the typical American does. My Muslim friends believe that Jesus was born of a virgin, that he ascended to heaven, and that he's coming back a second time. Well, that's far more than the typical American believes about Jesus.
In a world full of diverse beliefs, what makes someone choose one faith over another? Today, we dive into the thoughts of Christian pastor Cliffe Knechtle. He unpacks his three main philosophical challenges with Mohammed and Islam and shares why Christianity is the path he's chosen to follow. Whether you're a seeker, a skeptic, or someone firm in your faith, this conversation will challenge and inspire your beliefs. Make sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. The link to this full video is in the description.
There are three philosophical reasons that I don't trust Muhammad. First point, you will notice that the miracle of Christianity is Jesus Christ. And you don't have to speak a particular language to hear about Jesus. The miracle of Islam is not a person. The miracle of Islam is the book, the Quran. But when you begin to study Islam, what you begin to realize is the only way you can truly appreciate the miracle of Islam is by reading it in Arabic. My philosophical problem with that is, why all of a sudden, when God reveals himself very wonderfully in an open way in Jesus, does he suddenly say, the only way to get my clearest revelation is by learning Arabic?
That prophets were sent to all the nations in the world to spread the word of Islam. It says that in the Quran. And another thing, the Quran is not the word of Muhammad, it is the word of God.
Thank you. It's the word of God, that's right. But it was written by Muhammad.
It was not written by Muhammad.
Who wrote it?
Muhammad was illiterate. He didn't know how to write or read.
Who wrote it?
It was the word of God, it is the divine word.
You see? It's every single time. They're very consistent. I appreciate it. All right? It is the Word of God, and they're very passionate about it. I respect your passion. There's no way you can rationally have a conversation with that. The same way, if you ask me, why do you believe the Bible is the Word of God? And I look you in the face and I say, because it's the Word of God. Rational discourse has broken down. All right, my second philosophical problem with Islam is, my Muslim friends inform me Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are inaccurate. They're perverted gospels.
In fact, it's been changed, they will say.
Right, exactly. So then obviously the next question is, well, where are the unperverted ones? Unfortunately, my Muslim friends cannot produce the unperverted ones. Instead, what my Muslim friends ask me to believe is that a revelation that Muhammad had 500 years after Jesus, which obviously means Muhammad never met Jesus, that book, the Quran, is a more accurate presentation of the historical Jesus than the Gospels written by the eyewitnesses. Well, I'm sorry. Whenever I want to study an historical person, I don't go running to a guy who lived 500 years after the fact. I want to go to the eyewitnesses. I'm not going to trust Martin Scorsese to be my primary source of information about Jesus. Martin Scorsese never met Jesus, neither did Cecil B. DeMille. I'm going to go back to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who live in the first century, to be my primary source of information about Jesus. Third point. My third philosophical problem with Islam is, my Muslim friends have great respect for Jesus. In fact, my Muslim friends respect Jesus far more than the typical American does. My Muslim friends believe that Jesus was born of a virgin, that he ascended to heaven, and that he's coming back a second time. Well, that's far more than the typical American believes about Jesus. But my Muslim friends say that although Jesus speaks the absolute truth, Muhammad also speaks absolute truth. And the problem is they contradict each other on certain points. You cannot have A be absolute true and then B be absolute true if A and B contradict each other. Because that does nothing then but to allow for C to come along, claiming C is absolute truth, in spite of the fact that C contradicts both B and A. You cannot have an absolute truth contradicted by another absolute truth.
Did Jesus ever claim to be God?
Yeah, he sure did.
I did.
Yes. John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was born, I am. In John 10:30, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. In John 14:9, Jesus says, he who has seen me has seen the Father. Clearly, Jesus claimed to be God.
So he was both human and God at the same time?
That's what he claimed. Maybe he was a lunatic, but that's what he claimed.
He wasn't a lunatic. He was a prophet.
Well, he claimed to be God in human form, which means he's more than a prophet. He's God in human form.
But
what he claimed.
God is something that's superior to human form, so it doesn't make sense for God to be human because he wouldn't necessarily be higher than the other.
All right, first point is God is not something. The Bible insists that God is someone, a personal being. And it's totally possible for a personal being who's the creator to humble himself and become a human being.